different reliability techniques for deep neural network algorithms and accelerators. So here we are comparing when we have high enough voltage, we will get very few failures, and even if those failures happen, they will be like single bit failures. For example, if you have a suppose 64 byte cache block or any block, so when the errors happen infrequently, that means when the voltage level is high, okay, then very few errors will happen. Okay, so it is highly likely that within a 64 byte block you will have either 0 errors or at most 1 error. But when you continue to suppose you lower the voltage, okay, suppose you lower the voltage, then what will happen? Many errors will happen, and even in one block you will see more than one error, right? More than one bit error. For example, out of the 64 byte block, you may see more than one error, maybe 2 error, 3 error, 4 errors, right? So that's what we are trying to show. So here, this is the case when only single bit failure. This is the multi-bit failure, and here not just multi-bit, many bits fail. Okay, so some persons, if you don't have any ECC, then you will have to disable all the lines. That means any cache block. So here line means cache block. So here, if a cache block has even one failure, just disable it. That means don't use it. Another option is okay, if you can only correct single bit failures, then whenever it has more than one bit failure, just disable it. See, the whole point is our memory is usually over provisioned. Okay, that means our typical applications may need only suppose 4 megabyte memory. Then we will usually have 6 megabytes of memory or 5 megabytes of memory. That means slightly additional memory, right? That is called redundant memory. We keep on purpose. We keep over provisioned memory. Actually, redundancy is different from over provisioning. Redundancy means I have like a spare which I don't always use, right? Only when something goes bad, then I start using that. That is called a spare part, just like a tire, right? We have a fifth tire. Now you can't, in normal circumstance, you will not run with 5 tires. Your car can only have 4 tires. So that fifth tire is a spare. Whereas over provision means you need less, but even though you need less, you're intentionally working with more. Right? Suppose I can very easily manage with, just an ordinary, suppose ordinary printer, right? Suppose just a black and white printer I can easily manage, but unnecessarily I spend money to bring a color printer. That is like over provision, right? Once in a year I may need a color printout. Just for that, why I should have a color printer? I can manage with black and white. Right? So that is all the years. I mean, throughout the year, I'm using the printer, but it is like more than what I really need. So that is over provision. Okay. So anyway, so now here. We use ECC. So my point is, because we disable such lines, our memory capacity slightly comes down. Right? Suppose you disable out of the, suppose you had, suppose you have 105 blocks. Okay, so out of them, even if you disable 2 or 3 or 5 blocks, you can still manage. Your actual requirement is only 100 blocks. But we over provisioned and we are using 105 blocks. So even though you disable 4 or 5 blocks, it's not harmful. Now here, another option is, so this is option number 1, this is option number 2. The option number 3 is, we may have some simple ECC for single bit failure. We may have somewhat strong ECC for multi-bit failures. But when the failures exceed even the capacity of this ECC, then we have to disable those lines. So I'm trying to show what are the possible options that designers can take. Sometimes they can manage with just ECC, whereas sometimes they can't. Even ECC is ineffective because there are too many errors. Then just don't use them. It is something like that. Sometimes you can just repair certain lines, but if it can't be repaired, just you will have to maybe throw and get something new. Or stop working completely. If you don't even can't get something, you just stop working. So that's the possible options. So this is the reliability profile of stack memory. I discussed it in our last class. So the topmost die has lot of soft errors because the alpha particles from upper material, and the bottommost die also has highest SE rate because the heat comes from the interposer in the logic die, which is on the bottom. So based on this, now you know that okay, this is very vulnerable, this is very vulnerable, whereas this is safe. So you can save some, useful, I mean, or more important data in these layers. Okay, so here is another metric for estimating error resilience of neurons. Okay, so now suppose consider a neuron which makes that makes a small contribution to the DNA output. Okay, so for example, we know, right? We have weights. Okay, and we have inputs. Okay, so now see, this neuron will have some output, right? That will be the output activation. Now, if that output activation is getting multiplied with a weight, which is very, 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 very small, right? So the contribution of this in the final output is very, very small, right? The contribution of this neuron in the final output is very, very small because its output is getting multiplied with a very, very small value. Okay. So that's why the resilience of a neuron is correlated with its contribution to the output. It is just like that, I'll give you a very, very simple real life example. Suppose someone who is a big position holder, like suppose director, he's probably making a lot of contribution to the institute, right? So whereas an ordinary maybe person, he is making much less contribution. So even if that ordinary person may fall sick, it's not so much impact on the institute, right, or any institution. Whereas if a top person or a most important person, if he falls sick, it's a huge impact. I mean, it's a huge impact. Many files may be pending, right? Many approvals may get delayed. So that's the same idea. So although all the neurons are there, but some neurons are making more contributions, other neurons are making less contribution. That's why resilience of a neuron is correlated with its average contribution to the output. So low contribution means it has high error resilience. So you can understand, right? Suppose someone who is making very less contribution. Okay, so even if that person is removed or he's becoming temporarily unavailable or sick, it's not so much impact, right? So that's why institute can still function even without that person. Suppose he goes on a leave. Okay, institute can still function quite well. Whereas if a top person or a most important person, if he is removed, then it's a lot of impact, right? It means institute cannot probably tolerate that error or that disturbance or that harm. Okay, so I hope this is very, very intuitive point. Everybody understands this point. Any questions here? The more contribution somebody is making, more more will be the impact if any error happens in that person or that neuron. That's the simple idea. So based on this, they have actually shown for this. There is a CNN which is used for MNIST images. So you know what is MNIST dataset, right? Which has MNIST dataset. How many classes it has? Anybody knows?
10 classes.
And
Okay,
number set.
Sorry,
0 to 9.
Yeah. This is MNIST handwritten digit recognition dataset. Yeah, it has 10 classes. So now, this is the input. Okay, now this is the layer 1. So usually, as you can see, so suppose whenever you have an image of a handwritten digit, okay, so usually that in the square image, the digit that you've written, that will be the center. That's why you can see that center points are very important, or they are very resilient. I'm sorry, they are very sensitive. Whereas corner pixels, even if you change them, it doesn't matter much, right? If you remember my approximate computing presentation, there I had shown that even if you crop the borders, it's not so much impact. Okay, So that's why. So this is very, very obvious. At the center, pixels have more impact. That means the center neurons will have more impact. And here, now the size is getting smaller. Here, depending on the filters which are there, that are there, different neurons will have more importance. So now, the more the number of, so this is same paper, Sean's paper. The more the number of neurons in a layer, the less amount of information each neuron contributes. So this is in general. This is general actually. No, not this may not apply to every network possible, but this is just general observation. So average resilience over all the neurons of a layer is equal to number of neurons in that layer. Okay. So based on this, you can. So the point is, if a neuron already has highest resilience, don't give it much priority for protection. Just like, for example, in a country, we give highest protection to probably the prime minister or the president, because anything wrong that happens with that leader, the whole country is getting into problem. Whereas an ordinary person, they don't receive any protection, because I mean, speaking in ordinary sense, even if suppose he's harmed, okay, it's not so much loss to the country. So that's why if highest resilience means it has least impact on the deep neural network. That's why don't give it much protection. So now how do you, so this was at the algorithm level. Now coming at the architecture level, how do we implement this idea? So based on this idea, how do we design the architecture? Okay, so suppose you have some accelerator like this. Okay, so this is like a 2D array of T's. For example, we have seen this kind in Grayskull. Okay, and similarly in TPU we had 2D arrays. In Brainwave we have 2D arrays of T's. So what we can do, we can map neurons which have high resilience to normal P's. So these are suppose normal P's. So they may not be fully reliable. They may not be exact, or they may not use ECC. Whereas suppose there are only few P's, these four, which we have very painstakingly designed so that they are very well protected. Just like, for example, a director's lodge, all right, or maybe like PM's residence. So they are maybe only one or two. They are very few in number. They are very costly to maintain or to even design and operate. That's why most important person should live in there. Okay. So map neurons which have least resilience. That means they are most crucial point, right? Neurons with this resilience to P is protected using ECC or redundancy. That means these P's already have some kind of protection mechanism such as ECC or redundancy. And even when we communicate the result of these P's, it happens over a very well protected data path, and even the memory where we store it, that is also protected. Right? Everybody agrees with that. That means just whatever data, whatever neurons are most crucial, you do the computation on them in a very, very secure manner or in a very protected manner. You store the result in a protected manner and so on. For example, I think I heard somebody there, I don't know the exact, but they're suggesting that from PM's house to the airport, there should be an underway, right? Underpass, so that the important person doesn't have to go through the road for it disturbs other, and probably also ensures the security of the leader, right? So this is a very simple idea in real life. So the whole point is when something is very crucial. So here least resilience, in other words, means most crucial data. So the computation on that also has to be in a highly protected manner. That means during computation, no error should get introduced, and during storage, no error should get introduced. So we have discussed about approximate computing, right? So there we show that for computation, we have many approximate computing ideas, such as using lower precision, okay, and so on. Similarly, for storage also we had many approximate storage computing idea, approximate storage ideas, right? For example, in DRAM, we may reduce the refresh rate. In SRAM, we may reduce the voltage. So the whole point is, in this protected in this protected memory, don't reduce the DRAM refresh rate. If it is SRAM, don't reduce the voltage. Keep the voltage high. Whereas here, we may use low voltage. Okay, so that's the idea. So based on this, now you can see that based on the algorithm level property, we are designing the hardware. Okay, that's the architecture. So based on the algorithmic knowledge, we are designing the architecture. That means based on the software, we are designing the hardware. Okay, any questions here? Okay. Now, here is another observation: higher vulnerability of memory than logic. So this is not just specific to DNN. This is a general point or general observation. This is like somewhat older paper, 2010 paper. So people have observed that when you reduce the voltage, it affects memory more than the logic elements, because memory is optimized for area. See, the point is, suppose you take last level cache or main memory. So there we are really worried about density. For example, like suppose you purchase a hard disk. Suppose so there you really want high capacity hard disk. I don't want 1 terabyte. I need 2 terabyte or 4 terabyte within the same form factor. That means I mean my portable hard disk maybe like this much size, which I can keep in my pocket. But within that size itself, I need more and more capacity: 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, 4 terabyte, 8 terabytes. So there, whichever memory I use, it should be optimized for area, right? Whereas laptop, I want faster laptop. I may be okay to compromise with the area, right? But I want faster laptop. So there, my goal is not so much area. There, my goal is performance, right? So memory is definitely optimized for area, whereas logic is not necessarily optimized for. I mean, logic at least is not that much optimized for area. That's why failure rate of memory increases very steeply with low voltage. So here you can see this is for the logic. So this is the minimum reported VDD for recent designs. That means what is the lowest operating voltage on which you can operate them. So point here is you can operate logic with even 0.2 volts or less than 0.2 volts, but you can't operate memory with that much low voltage. Memory has to have higher voltage, otherwise memory will completely fail. Okay, you understood this point? So let me explain this again. So for example, take any technology node. For example, here, so this is between 50 to 100. Suppose this is 65. Yeah, this is 65. This is I think 80. Or maybe, sorry, this is 90, I guess, because after 90 there is 65 nanometer. So suppose this is 65. So at particular technology node, logic can work even with 0.3 volt or maybe 0.25 volts. But memory has to have this 0.4 volts or here 0.35 volts. That means memory needs higher voltage compared to logic. So based on this, we can have different voltage islands, right? We can have processor core, that means the core which has logic at lower voltage, and we can have memory at higher voltage. Okay, so that means suppose we have a processor where we have the core and we have the cache, right? So what we can do, we can supply the core with lower voltage and we can supply cache with slightly higher voltage, right? Even in, for example, TPU, it may have some. Of course, TPU doesn't have on-chip cache, but some of the other accelerators, they may have both core part and memory part. So we can give two different voltage supplies. One which is of lower value, that is for the core part, and another which is of higher, higher voltage supply, which is for the cache. Of course, this has its own challenges because we have to convert the voltage level. Suppose one of them is at 0.3, another of them is a 0.5. You need to convert voltage from 0.3 volt to 0.5 volts and vice versa. And that has its own overheads. Okay, so see why we are doing it? To save power, right? We can, if we want, we can operate both core and cache at 0.5 volts. Because at 0.5 both will work fine. But instead of that, we are really very aggressively want to save power. So we said, okay, memory needs 0.5, that's fine. But core, the processor core, can I operate it at lower than 0.5? Yes, I can go as low as 0.3. So okay, let me go there. Let me have core at 0.3 volts. Okay, so all these techniques. Now let me go back and just quickly flip the slide, so just to make sure what was the full point. So this, all the techniques that I discussed here, they were criticality aware protection. So their summary was, you find out which regions are more critical, or that means which are more important or which are more vulnerable. Which are more vulnerable. So if something is very crucial, you have to really protect it well. If something is highly vulnerable, then also you have to protect it well. Something like a sick person, you have to really protect it very well. Right? So based on this, you store, either you decide, should I give more protection to this or less protection to this? Okay, so this was all criticality. That means which is more critical or which is more vulnerable, which can get more errors, which needs strong protection, which needs less protection. So based on this, we discussed many ideas, right? Should they use simple ECC? Should they use strong ECC? Should they have disabling of lines or not? Right? Should they be using normal PEs or protected PEs? And should they use 80-bit cells, which are very resilient to low voltage, or should they use just the normal 60-bit cells, which are not very resilient to low voltage? So all these techniques were based on this. And how many copies should we keep? 1 copy, 2 copy, 3 copy? In which layer should we save them? Should we save them in top or bottom layer, or should we save them in intermediate layer? So all this were, as you can see, based on the criticality. Now let us see another class of techniques which work based on the observation that usually fault-free weights are small, and when you insert fault in them, their value increases a lot. Right? So we discussed this point in the floating point, right? So floating point, yes, I think on Tuesday I showed you a number which was just 2.34. And when you flip just 1 bit in the exponent, it becomes 10 raised to power 19. So when you suddenly see some value, suppose you see a weight which is 10 raised to power 19, you can immediately conclude it is a attacked weight, because all our weights are not, none of our normal weight can be so large. Okay. So the typical values of weights or activations of a DNN are in a fixed range. So if we can find out, okay, what is a typical range of weights in fault-free execution, then during faulty execution, any incorrect values can be identified as those that lie for this range. For example, like suppose we all go to doctors to find out certain values. So now they will say, okay, if your maybe sugar level is within this range, you are okay. Otherwise, you have diabetes. So how can they say diabetes? Because they know a healthy human has this much sugar level, this much heart rate, this much, all the vitals. Outside this range is faulty. So for that, you have to know, all the, vital signs and their normal values. If a value is outside that range, you can say this is a faulty or this is some disease. So same idea here. Okay. So this point we have already discussed, that compared to floating point data type, fixed point data type with only small number of integer bit reduces the error rate, because the magnitude of fault will be very small. Even if suppose you flip the MSB itself, the amount of change will be very small. And this point also we have discussed earlier. Suppose a 0 to 1 flip increases the magnitude of the weight, which increases the activation a lot. Whereas if you flip a bit from 1 to 0, you are reducing its weight. That's why it doesn't have as much impact. Okay. So unduly high activations produced by the faulty weight overrides the remaining activations. Right? Suppose there was one value which was, I mean, all the values were almost equal. Now, one of out of the 10 values, you suddenly increase one value by a large proportion. So what it will do, it will suppress other values. That means, because I mean, for example, in the max pooling, only that largest value will pass, other values will not pass. So that means the faulty value is going ahead, correct value is not going ahead. Okay, whereas if you reduce, that means if you bring it from 1 to 0, it will have less impact, right? It will have less impact because, you know, suppose there is a max pooling layer, then this small value will not pass, some other value will pass. So this will not override other values. This is a usual case. You can probably definitely find some very corner case where this also has a lot of impact. But in general, we can say that increasing a particular weight has a lot of impact on the output accuracy. Okay. Now let us discuss some technique. Let us discuss some technique to how do we handle this faults in the weights. So one simple technique is just word masking. If you find out that a weight has become faulty, then make it 0. Okay, suppose there was some weight which had an original value of suppose 30. Okay, now it gets some fault from 13, it becomes 80 or 90. So now you see that the weight value suddenly increased, right? From 13 it has become 90. So that the increased value will cause a lot of problem, right? It will degrade the accuracy. So you make it 0. So from the point is, in the fault-free execution, its value was 13. Now it has become 0. That 0 is better than using 90. Right? Using a weight value of 0 is better than using a weight value of 90, because if you use a weight value of 90, it will cause a lot of problem. Okay, so this is very, very trivial, right? Anybody can propose it. It's very, very simple. Now, here is another important technique, bit masking, which is slightly more intelligent technique. So here we assume that the weight is stored in 2's complement representation. I hope you know what is 2's complement representation. I'm sure I must have mentioned it before in this course. But if you don't know, please read about it. 2's complement representation is very, very important and very, very frequently appearing. So in 2's complement, this shows the sign bit. Okay. And okay, so now suppose you now this is the original value. Okay, so now because of the soft error, a bit flips from 0, it becomes 1. Okay, so the value was originally 77, and from that it has become 109. Okay, now word masking is very, very simple. Everybody can do it, right? You just make it 0. So instead of 109, it has become 0. I mean, instead of 109 faulty value, it has become 0. But in the bit masking, what we do? We first of all we assume that the sign bit has not become faulty. Sign bit is correct. This is our assumption here. In bit masking, our assumption is that sign bit has not become wrong. If sign bit has also become wrong, there is a separate technique next slide. But first of all, please assume that sign bit has not become wrong, and also we know which bit has become wrong, which bit has possibly become wrong. Okay, so here this bit changed from 0 to 1. So what we do, because this was 1, and we don't know whether it is right or wrong. Probably it got an error. Probably it was not at all affected. Okay, that means we are doubtful. We are not sure whether this bit was correct or not, but we are doubtful. We have doubt. For other bits, we have no doubt. Other bits are definitely correct. But for this bit, we have doubt that it could be correct or not here. So for this faulty value, what we do? we make it same as the sign bit. Okay, so this bit was 1 and the sign bit was 0, so we change it from 1 to 0. So it turns out that the actual value was 77 and we change it back to 77. That means we have removed the error. Here is another example of a negative number. Now here the bit was the value was minus 51. A bit flip happened, which made it minus 19. Okay. Now, of course, word masking is very trivial, but in the bit masking, this bit was 1, and because our sign bit was 1, so we let it remain 1. We did not change it to 0. That means whichever bit we are doubtful about, we change it to become the same as the sign bit. So it becomes 1. So original value was minus 51. So in effect, what we have done, we have not corrected the error. Right? We have not corrected the error. If we had changed it to 0, we could have corrected the error, but we don't know whether it was wrong or right. So now here we have not corrected the error at all. So why this is a good idea? Right? We have not corrected the error. We let it remain minus 19. Why is it a good idea? You can read the slide and answer the question. It is written on the slide. Why is it that although we have not corrected the error, but still we are okay with it? Yes, Priyansh? Sagar?
We have reduced the magnitude.
So what? So what is the benefit of that? Yes, we have reduced the magnitude. That is a very good observation. You are close, but what is the benefit of that? Yes, Hemkant? Yes, Chaitanya? Please read the slide. Can you tell me this point? Okay. From this, can you now tell this slide this slide you see, and then tell me why reducing the magnitude is a good idea. Anupam? Srinivas?
Sir, because sir, effect of 1 to 0 flip is less, sir. So that's why reducing magnitude will also have the corresponding effect, sir. So it will have lesser effect, sir. Impact would be less.
Okay, let us have it more clearly stated. You have stated the answer correctly, but it's not. You have stated the answer, but not very correctly. Not very clear communication. Anubha? Ashish?
So now we have the
Sir,
less
error will
accuracy.
Okay, Anubha first, then Vikas. Yes.
So now we have the less impact on the accuracy.
Slightly more. Yeah, Vikas? Vikas, want to say something?
yes, sir. I was saying that error will be less. Accuracy will be less impact on accuracy, and error will be less compared to that
Okay.
in the.
See, the point is, I think you have all said, but let me say it more clearly. See, when this number was minus 51, we now we don't know what was the original number, right? That's the whole idea. I mean, if we exactly know what was the original number, but the point is, using some ECC or something, we could detect that, okay, this bit is possibly wrong. So now, once we are doubtful about that number, it is better that number be small rather than it being large. Okay? Because even if it is wrong now, because we've reduced its magnitude, it will have less impact on the output. That's why it will contribute less error. Okay, so it's just like that. Sometimes okay, here are some wrong elements. or people who could possibly cause some problems, let us suppress them. Let us put a curfew. Okay, let us maybe cut the resources so that they can't grow a lot. Something like bad cells, you stop their progress. Okay, or there are some insects, you put some. So the whole point is when you are doubtful about somebody that okay they could be wrong, so don't let them grow. You suppress them. So here the same idea is that because here we don't know what was the all we see is this faulty value and probably a doubt that okay this bit could be wrong. So out of -51 or -19, we select a smaller value, smaller in terms of magnitude. So that's why we chose it. But however, it doesn't offer protection to the sign bit. That means our assumption is that sign bit has to be correct. But if suppose sign bit itself becomes wrong, then a fault in the sign bit can propagate to other bits, which can cause a large amount of error. Right? Because suppose now this bit was faulty. Now suppose after some time this bit were to become faulty, or this bit were to become faulty, then every time we are masking it with the sign bit. Now, if in the beginning itself I make the sign bit faulty, nobody recognizes it, then all that error is passing to other bits. So that is the main problem. So that's why this was some other paper. This was Regan's paper, and then this paper has finally proposed some solution. So most of the neural network weights are close to 0. That means their values are not very large. They are using small values. Okay. So in 2's complement format, for small magnitude positive numbers, sign bit is same as MSB, and for negative numbers, sign bit is same as MSB, which is equal to 1. So this can be easily seen. Let us suppose here. So 77 is somewhat of a large bit. That's why here sign bit and MSB. So by MSB, I mean this bit, the second bit, and this is the sign bit. Okay. So here, because the 77 and 109, they are large values. But if you see a number between 0 to 63, for them, this bit also will be 0. And this bit anyway 0 because it is a positive number. Similarly, for 0 to -63, right? Here, sign bit is also 1, MSB is also 1. Okay, so that's the observation here. That's why values of sign bit and MSB are the same. Now, here is the proposed technique. So, if a fault is there in the MSB, it is masked with the sign bit. Using the sign bit as a mask, non-sign bits are recovered using the bit masking scheme. So, whole point here is that if there is a fault in the MSB, so this step is extra. That means we are using this observation that if sign bit could also become faulty, then at least MSB may not have become faulty, because we are assuming only one bit has become faulty at a time. Okay, so if a fault is in MSB, you recover it, you mask it with the sign bit. Okay, and using the sign bit as a mask, non-sign bits are recovered using the bit masking scheme. And if the sign bit is also become faulty, then just make the whole register 0. So this particular observation is helpful for also recovering the MSB. Okay, finally, last few slides. So here, how do we work with faulty hardware? So see, now here again, go back and see. Here, we try to protect. That means let us do something has become faulty. Let us do something about it. But here, we have to just live with the faulty hardware. Okay, something has become faulty. I can't repair it. Let us just do something. Okay, I can't repair it, but can I maybe do some other techniques? Suppose here we have some spare, right? Suppose we have data path out of the 2 are spare. Now these 2 have become faulty, so we stop using them and we start using the other function units. Okay, so in this way we have started using the spares. Okay, so the last technique. So here Suppose we take a tensor processing unit. Okay, so they have modeled a TPU. So it has 64K max. So can anybody tell me now which of the version 1 or version 2 or version 3 it is? So what is the size of systolic array in TPU version 1 and in TPU version 2?
256.
Version 256.
128 into 120.
128 into 128 is for what? Which one?
TP version 3.
Version
From
2.
Version 2. Okay,
Version
fine.
2
Yeah.
and 3.
Yeah, so this 64K Mac, so this one can be for which one? Version 1 or version 2? Forget version 3, just say version 1 or version 2. How much is this?
Version 2, sir.
Once 256 into 256, 65,000.
Version 2 will be more affected, sir, with this.
No, no.
Version 2.
This is 64K Max. Is it in TP version 1 or is it in TP version 2?
1, sir.
1, yeah, because if you multiply this, you get this number. Actually, this K is not 1000, it is 1024. Okay, so TP version 1 has this many max. Okay, so they have shown that although TPU has almost 64,000 max, but if you just make 4 of them faulty, so here it is permanent fault. Okay, so that means they just stop working. That means they will just give permanently they will give the same 0 output. So even though you have only 4 out of the 64,000 faulty, the whole accuracy of TPU will drop. Why? Because those why? Let us see why. Because faults change the higher bits of MAC output, hence the faulty outputs are typically much larger than the correct outputs. Okay, so now we all know that if you change the higher bits of MAC, then there is a lot of impact on the final accuracy. Okay, the faults in the higher bits of MAC output. The faulty outputs are much larger than the correct outputs. So they propose 2 techniques. One technique is that prune those weights that are mapped to a faulty MAC unit. Okay, for example, suppose let us take instead of 64K, let us take a simple 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I will go back. I will keep it. I will see that I will show you the TPU presentation also just to bring out certain points. We are almost time here. Okay, so weights are preloaded into the. This is the. Okay, so I want to show all of my screen. So now you can see my screen. So here we said that the weights are preloaded into the MAC array. That's a weight stationary architecture. So what does it mean? Suppose we have here. So suppose we have instead of 64K, you just assume 4 cross 4. Okay. So here this is our TPU where we have 16 MAC units. Okay. So a particular weight will go into the first unit, second unit, third unit. That means all the 16 all the 16 MAC units, they will have a fixed weight. Okay, now if you see the pruning, suppose here we have this pruning idea. Okay, here. Okay, so here you can see that here is how many 6 into 6. So this is a 6 into 6. So you can in fact assume just 4 cross 4. So we are specifically pruning here weight number, the row number 0, weight number 5 and 6. Row number 1, 0, 1, 5 and 6. Right? So we are specifically pruning certain weights. So similarly here, if we know that, okay, suppose out of the, let me go back to the presentation mode. Suppose here out of this, suppose you know that this bit, this and these two have become faulty. So what you do in your weight matrix, which is also 4 cross 4 matrix, you prune this weight and prune this weight. Okay, So in that way, there is no weight that gets mapped to this faulty MAC units. So you will not have an impact on the output. Another technique, this is okay. This is just the first technique itself. So for doing this, what you do, you put a bypass path. That means like this. So there is no output that will pass through this faulty MAC unit. It will just bypass. This is the bypass path. Okay, so if it is faulty, then take this output. If it is not faulty, then take this output, the output of the previous MAC unit. In second technique, apply technique 1, and then you have to retrain the unpruned weights to recover the accuracy loss. Okay, so after pruning, if you remember, we had already shown that after pruning we do retraining. And retraining is performed for obtaining the prune network. So whenever we do pruning, we always have to do retraining. So here also they are suggesting that after pruning, we will retrain the other network. The other weights, right? See here. See here we pruned these 2 weights, but the other 14 weights are there, right, remaining. So during retraining, we will try to adjust those 14 weights such that the impact of these 2 weights being gone is recovered, right? So for example, retraining, you can take any simple way, right? Suppose there are then leave. So what will the administration do? They will train the other staff. Okay, that Mr. left. Can you start doing? So now the administration is training the remaining 68 so that whatever expertise we have lost because of 2 people leaving away, recovered by other people contributing more. Okay, other people take their role. That's the same idea of retraining. So here they've shown that even with 50% faulty MACs, their technique can operate TPU with negligible accuracy loss.